Hiya, it's Amanda here from Lolli Lulu Crafts, and today we have a Stampin' Up card for you made using some stamp sets that were in my stash and some lovely soft lemon and blues, and just an idea that I'd seen in lots of different places, and I've kind of used and taken it and sort of done my own thing with it. Hopefully you like it, so let's get crafting. So the first thing I'm going to do is stamp my sentiment. Now you can't really see, but there's actually a piece of vellum on my stamp platform here. Now you don't need a stamp platform to do this. I obviously have it, so I use it. I do like using it. I do find it's helpful if there's any mistakes, because you can go back and re-stamp and there's no problem. Now one thing I also should have done, which didn't do, was to dust my vellum first. It's always better if you're going to be embossing, which I'm going to be doing, to dust off any cardstock or whatever you're stamping onto first, so that any finger marks or any little bits that the embossing powder could stick to are gone, other than obviously what you want it to stick to. So I just used some clear embossing ink, and then I used some white detail embossing powder because it's for the sentiments, so I wanted it really nice fine embossing powder. So then all I'm going to do is just heat emboss it. Now what you want to do to try and help any warping is just heat your gun first, your heat tool first, for a while, so that the actual heat is coming out really hot beforehand, and that helps melt the powder more quickly and stops any warping, or at least prevents it being quite so bad. So then the next thing we're going to be doing is stamping my watercolour wash background using this great stamp. I love this stamp from Stampin' Up, and it's a lovely big stamp, and I'm just popping it onto some Whisper white cardstock here. I've got the two kinds, I've got the thick and the regular. This is the regular thickness here, because it doesn't need to be thicker at this point. And I'm starting off with the yellow ink at the top, and all these will be listed on the blog post for precise colours, etc., and then the blue ink at the bottom. And you can see there I just moved it and it didn't quite get the middle, so I'm just going back and making sure that I'm covering that. And at the moment you can see there's just a tiny gap in the middle, and I was actually going to be overlapping it, and then I dropped my ink pad anyway, so it didn't really matter. And then I'm taking a paintbrush with just water on. Now that was a little bit wetter than I wanted, but it didn't really matter, because what I want to do is create that watercolour effect, and I want it to be kind of smushy in the middle. I want the two colours to kind of blend together. So I'm gradually drying out the brush as I'm going sort of towards each far edge of the stamp, so that the middle is the wettest, and then it's sort of blending out very slightly. Now you don't need to press hard, but the good thing is if you just leave it for a second, especially because you've got water on there, and it will just absorb into your cardstock and get that colour going into the card for you. Now it looks a bit strange at the moment because you can't really see it so well, so it looks like it's super dark at the top and nothing in the middle, but there is actually stuff in the middle. And then I just took a strip of yellow cardstock that was in my stash that actually was the same yellow as the colour there, just so that I could use that, because I'm going to be putting a banner across. So I wanted to just use this as a guide to help me stamp my, or position the stamps for my sort of reeds and things that I was putting down from the wetland set. And I'm using quite a soft taupey colour for this. I didn't want it super strong because we're doing very soft kind of watery colour sort of effect. We want it strong enough so it still looks like a silhouette, but we want it not to be black, because I think that would be a bit harsh. And then I'm just cleaning that off because I'm going to be moving it to a different position. And what I want to do is put it sort of slightly lower, as you can see, but in order to make sure that I'm not overlapping any of the little bits with the previous one, I just put the little mask thing that you get in the stamp set just over the top. I don't stick them on. You can stick them on, but I find it doesn't then adhere to the stamp platform or block as well, so I tend not to do that. Now initially I was going to just sort of ink the top half, but then I decided it would be easier just to put a piece of card or paper at the bottom there, because it doesn't matter if there's like, normally you get like a step and there's a bit where between the stamp, you'll see here where there's like a gap, because obviously there's like a little baby step between the lower cardstock that you're stamping onto and the one that's using as your mask. But because we're putting a band across, it doesn't matter that you've got that little gap. What we want is for it not to be below that band. So the next thing I did was got the other stamp set that I had, and this is just for the birds, and I'm doing all of the birds except for the very top one there, just to, again, very soft colour, just to add something in the sky. I just felt that it would look better like that. And the next thing I then did was cut this down to fit onto my A5 card, but I also needed it so that I could cut this into 3. So if you cut it to 5 1/4 wide, and then whatever height you want that's suitable for an A4 card, I can't remember what that is off the top of my head, and then I cut it into a 1 3/4 each piece, and that equals then equally 3 parts, because it was quite fiddly to get my head around, you know, to make it fit on the A4 but to then also cut it evenly. So that was the dimensions that you need. Again, I'll put that all on the blog post for you, so if you don't quite catch it here, it will be there as well. So then I've just taken the Whisper White thick cardstock, folded it in half to create an A5 card. I took the Soft Sky, I think it is, the blue that matches our ink, and just cut a piece to go on the inside. Again, 1, I think it looks nicer, but 2, as you've probably heard me say repeatedly, even with the thickest of cards, if you've got something quite significant on the front, suddenly the back feels really weak. So it's always worth adding that extra layer if you've got some extra layers on the front. Now, originally you saw I didn't put as much foam on, but when I then sort of laid them out just to see how it looked, and you could start to see that it would start to bend between the bits of foam. So I felt that it really needed proper coverage for this. It just would, if you didn't have it correct and it started warping, it's going to look weird. The way you've cut it, you need the pattern to be absolutely even and straight, because if it starts to bend, you lose that sort of illusion, and it just doesn't work really. And what I did there was just added some wet glue to the back of the foam, and 2 reasons. 1, it just makes a stronger hold over time, but 2, as you can see, even though those bits were sitting down, I didn't press them down yet, but even though they were sort of sitting on the card, I was able to lift them and position them, and it just gives you that movement, because you really need that here, because you've got 3 pieces that you need to get in position around the edge correctly so they're even on all the sides, but also you want the gap just about the right amount. If it's too wide, you again lose that illusion, and it doesn't follow across properly. Your eye doesn't sort of make it go across. But if it's too narrow, then you don't have that effect either of having it in 3 pieces. You may well have not bothered. So it needs that extra time that you get with the wet glue. So then I cut my little band here, or banner, whatever you want to call it, to go across the card, and I cut that in the blue. Originally I was thinking about doing it in the yellow, but I decided that it would look better in the blue, sort of going down following the ink. So I just sort of positioned it, make sure it was the right width and position, etc. And then I was just trying to work out where exactly on there I wanted my vellum sentiment, because you can see how adding the vellum across the top of the blue just really softens that blue down again, and also obviously pops that sentiment out as well. The white of the sentiment sort of pops off the background, but not so strong that it's sort of like stark against this lovely soft background that we're really creating here. The whole image is meant to be very soft, very subtle and delicate, and I think that that's really works well with that sort of vellum over the top there. And it's not super heavy cardstock, so just a nice tape pen will work fine. And here what I wanted to make sure was that the ink from my stamp didn't show below that banner at all, because obviously that sort of spoils that illusion. So it was just positioning that right so my little reeds were in the right place, but also the ink didn't show below. So it's just fiddling around getting that in the right position. And I liked how it went solidly across all 3 pieces. Again, I think that just added another element to it that really worked nicely. And then the final touch I felt would look really nice is these little clear, sort of almost like water droplets. They're not gems, they're like little droplets. I don't know really what they're called. I'll see if I can link them in. I think I got them off Amazon, so I'll see if I can find them again and link them on the blog post for you. Now you can see here I originally was putting a dot of glue onto the cardstock directly, but you can see that what happened was the glue is quite stringy, and so it kind of went stringy across the rest of the card, and it was a bit of a pain. So what I did afterwards was actually put a dot of glue, because it was quite a nice reasonable size, it's not like a gem, so I could actually hold on to it and just put a dot on the back, and that worked a little bit better, I felt. The other alternative of course is using a hot glue gun, but you definitely will get stringiness with that. But of course with the hot glue gun it does tend to, once it's dry, sort of that mid-dry point, you can kind of peel it off, so it's a little bit easier to deal with the string than it is with this glue. But as I say, this worked fine doing it like this, and you were able to pop them down no problem at all. And I think that just finished that off really nicely. It just added that last little element, because it's obviously meant to be like a watery scene with the water and the sun behind, and I think that just finished that sort of look off really well. And that is it. That's our card finished, and I think it came out really, really well. I was really pleased. As I said, I was inspired by some different cards that I'd seen, and I just used some bits that I had in my stash. So you can use the idea of it for all different versions. I'm actually going to, in a couple of weeks time, I think it is, I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to upload it, but whenever, I've got a Christmas version of this to share with you. Originally I was just going to put the picture at the end for you to see the difference, but I decided that I would actually show you the whole set, because I did like a set of 4, so you'll see a sort of similar style but done with a different stamps, etc., just so you can see how it can be changed up. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this week's card, and I will see you again soon. Thanks so much for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe, like, and all those good things if you haven't already. Thanks again. Bye.